My name is Elara, and for as long as I can remember, I've worked at my parents' tableware store. We sell everything from fancy dinner plates to the kind of mugs you use for your morning coffee. It's a family business through and through. The day everything started to change was just like any other, until Serafina Wilson from the bakery next door stormed into our store. She had a way of busting in like she owned the place. Fact is, she bellowed not even a foot into the shop. "I need to speak with you now." Her voice could slice through concrete. I was rearranging some ceramic teapots. We just got in, but paused to watch the scene unfold. Dad wiped his hands on his apron and shot me a look that said, "Here we go again." "Sure thing. Beverly, what's stirring?" Dad always tried to stay cheerful around her, but you could tell he was bracing himself. Serafina Wilson glanced around, her eyes finally landing on me. "This is family business. Elara, mind giving us a minute?" Her tone rubbed me the wrong way, but I shrugged it off and wandered over to the other side of the store, pretending to fix an already perfect display of dinner sets. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but their voices carried over the shelves. "I'll cut to the chase, Thaddeus. My bakery and your store have been neighbors for years. It's time we think bigger. What do you say to merging our businesses?" Her voice was all business, serious. Dad coughed, a little taken aback. "Merge, huh? That's a hefty suggestion, Beverly. What's got this idea in your head now?" "Not just that," she continued, lowering her voice so I had to strain to hear. "I think our kids could make this even more beneficial. If Elara and Orion were to tie the knot, it would solidify the deal." I almost dropped a teapot. Marry Orion. The Orion I knew was her son, sure, but he was 10 years older than me, and we barely exchanged 2 words despite being neighbors. I peeked around the aisle and saw Dad scratching his head, clearly in deep thought. "Orion is a good lad, and Elara's a bright girl," Dad finally said. "But marriage, they hardly know each other, Beverly. They'll get along, trust me. Plus, it makes good business sense, doesn't it?" There was a sharpness in her voice, like she was used to getting her way. Dad nodded slowly. "I'll talk it over with the missus and Elara, of course." When Serafina Wilson left, Dad called me over. "Elara, you heard all that, didn't you?" I nodded, not sure what to make of it. "She wants to merge the store and the bakery, and she wants me to marry Orion." "Yeah," Dad sighed, rubbing his temples. "What do you think? I know it's a lot to take in." Marrying for business sounded like something out of an old movie, not something I'd ever imagined for myself. "I don't know, Dad. Orion seems nice, but marry him just like that? You should meet him properly this time. See if you two click. No pressure to decide right now. We'll take this step by step." Orion and I spent the next few months getting to know each other. I found that he wasn't just well-mannered. He had a genuine side that cared about the business as much as his mother did, but in a less overbearing way. Our conversations often drifted from business to personal topics, which made the whole situation seem less like a contract and more like a potential relationship. The wedding planning, though, was a whole other beast. Serafina Wilson, my soon-to-be mother-in-law, took over everything, from the cake from her bakery to the decorations that looked like they belonged in one of her display windows. One afternoon, as we were going over the guest list, she barged into the room with a stack of invitations so thick you'd think we were summoning the whole town. "Elara, dear, I've added a few names to your guest list. People important to our business. It's crucial they're there," she announced, dropping the stack on the table with a thud that made me jump. I bit my tongue, not wanting to start a fight. Orion saw this and squeezed my hand under the table. "We'll sort it out, Robbie. It's our day, remember?" The day of the wedding was a blur. I stood at the back of the hall in my dress, feeling more like a prop in Seraphina Wilson's grand business scheme than a bride. My dad came up to me, his smile a little forced. "You look beautiful, Elara. Ready?" he asked, offering his arm. I nodded, taking a deep breath. "Let's do this." The ceremony went by in a rush, and before I knew it, Orion and I were pronounced husband and wife. The reception was loud, filled with Seraphina Wilson's guests who talked more about the potential of our joint ventures than our nuptials. The merger was completed soon after the wedding. Both shops were knocked into one big space, with a section for the bakery and another for the tableware. On the first day we opened the combined store, Seraphina Wilson was everywhere, directing staff like a general. "Elara, dear, make sure those plates are aligned with the pastries. Symmetry sells," she called out across the store. I adjusted the plates, trying to follow her exacting standards. Orion was in the bakery section, trying to coordinate with the bakers. "Make sure those scones are fresh. Elara, how's it going over there?" he shouted over the noise. "Trying to keep up with your mom's symmetry mantra," I shouted back, a hint of frustration in my voice. As weeks turned into months, the workload only got heavier. Between running the front of the store, helping in the bakery, and handling all the paperwork, I found myself unable to keep up with my college classes. "Elara, you're running a business now. You won't need that degree. This is your life," Seraphina Wilson declared one evening. Her tone was dismissive, as if the matter was already decided. Her sharp, final words hit me harder than I expected. Living with them was supposed to save us money and make managing the business easier, she argued. Instead, it just meant longer hours for me since we were a short walk from the store. The lack of personal space and constant oversight from Seraphina Wilson suffocated me, making each day harder than the last. What started as a partnership increasingly felt like a takeover. Meanwhile, something else troubled me more than I expected. My dad was around less and less. One particularly busy Tuesday morning, as I was setting up the store before opening, I couldn't help but feel the emptiness of his absence. He used to be here by now, sharing a joke or two to kick off the day. Instead, it was just me and the clinking of ceramics. That evening, after a long day of dealing with customers and Seraphina Wilson's incessant directions, I visited my parents. The air in their living room felt heavier than usual, like there were words hanging in it that no one dared to speak. "Dad, why aren't you at the store much anymore?" I asked as soon as I sat down. The direct approach felt necessary. My dad looked up, a frown creasing his forehead. "Well, Elara, it's complicated. Beverly she's taken over more than we expected." My mom chimed in from across the room, her voice sharp with worry. "She's pushed your father out, Elara. That contract we signed, it wasn't just a merger. It's like we handed her the keys to the kingdom." My stomach twisted into knots. "What do you mean, Dad? You've always handled the orders and suppliers." He sighed, his hands clasped tightly together. "Not anymore. Beverly rewrote the job roles. Legally, I'm just a consultant now. Barely that. I don't have a say in the business I built." Anger flared up inside me, hot and fierce. "Why didn't you say anything? We thought we could handle it, sort it out without worrying you," my mom said, her eyes sad. "But it's clearer we can't. She's taking everything we've worked for, Elara." The next day, I confronted Seraphina Wilson. It was early, just as the morning light began spilling into the store. She was arranging some pastries, her back to me as I walked in. "Seraphina Wilson, we need to talk about my dad," I said, my voice firm, louder than I intended. She turned around, her expression one of mock surprise. "Oh, what about him, dear? You know what I'm talking about. You're pushing him out of his own business." "Why are you doing this?" I demanded. Seraphina Wilson straightened up, wiping her hands on her apron as she faced me. "Elara, your father is getting older. He can't handle the stress of the business. It's better this way. I'm making things more efficient." "That's not your call to make," I shot back. "He built this place. You can't just sideline him because you think it's better." She scoffed, shaking her head. Business is tough, Elara. It's not about sentimental value. It's about keeping the ship afloat. I'm doing what's necessary. When the pandemic hit, it felt like someone had pulled the floor out from under us. Sales at the store plummeted. Every day, the empty aisles stared back at me, a grim reminder that things were bad and might get worse. During one of those quiet, worrying shifts, I decided we couldn't just sit around waiting for normal to return. Orion, we have to pivot to online. We can set up delivery, maybe start taking individual orders, I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. Orion looked skeptical but nodded. It's worth a shot. Let's talk to Mom about it. I knew convincing Serafina Wilson would be an uphill battle. She had her ways set in stone and viewed online sales as a risky venture. True to form, when we brought it up, she dismissed it outright. We're not some tech startup. We're a brick-and-mortar business. We'll wait this out, she declared, cutting off any further discussion. But I couldn't just stand by and watch everything we built crumble to dust. I started something on the down low. After hours, I used our store's resources to build an online community. I sold dishes from the store and baked cakes after the bakery closed for the day. Orders began to trickle in, then flood. Keeping this from Orion and Serafina Wilson was exhausting. I was burning the candle at both ends, managing our secret online sales and my day job at the store. Nights turned into mornings, and I found myself sneaking back home well past midnight on many occasions. One night, as I tiptoed in, trying not to wake anyone, I found Serafina Wilson waiting in the living room, her arms folded and her face a mix of anger and disappointment. "Where have you been, Elara? Look at the state of this house," she snapped, her voice low but fierce. "I've been working, Serafina Wilson. We got a rush of online orders tonight," I replied, my voice weary from too many long nights. "Online orders? What online orders?" Her voice rose, sharp and accusing. Before I could explain, Orion came down, drawn by the noise. "Mom, what's going on? Ask your wife what's going on. She's running some secret side business and neglecting her duties around here." Serafina Wilson shot back, glaring at me. Orion turned to me, confusion and frustration written all over his face. "What's she talking about?" I sighed, the fatigue of the last few weeks catching up to me. "I started an online store. It's been keeping us afloat since the pandemic started. I didn't tell you because your mom said no and I didn't think she'd go for it." Orion rubbed his temples, looking between his mom and me. "You should have told me, Elara. And you," he turned to his mom, "should have been more open to her ideas." Serafina Wilson's face hardened. "This is my house, and while you're under my roof, you'll follow my rules. Both of you." The argument spiraled from there. Orion, usually my ally, sided with his mom this time. "Elara, you need to balance your time better, help out more around here." Defeated and heartbroken that Orion didn't see how hard I was trying to save our business, I cut back on the online orders. I started spending my mornings cleaning the house instead of preparing shipments or baking. My afternoons were spent running the pastry counter, a reminder of what I had to scale back on to keep peace in the house. One dreary, rain-soaked afternoon, I was straightening up the store hall when the door creaked open. A little girl, about 8 years old, stumbled in. Her clothes were drenched, sticking to her skin, and she was crying, her face streaked with tears. I rushed over to her, setting aside the stack of plates I was arranging. "Hey there, what happened? Are you okay?" I asked, trying to sound as gentle as I could. Before she could answer, Serafina Wilson spotted us from the end of the aisle. She marched over, her lips pressed into a thin line. "What is this, Elara? We don't have time for this today. She looks like a beggar. Put her out before others see." My stomach twisted at her words. "She's just a child, Serafina Wilson. She's clearly lost and needs help." Orion came over, having overheard his mother. His face was unreadable as he glanced at the girl, and then back at me. Elara, Mom's right. We can't have kids like her running into the store. It's not good for business. Just handle it, okay? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Orion, she's scared and alone. We can't just throw her back out into the rain. Ignoring them both, I took the girl to a chair and wrapped her in a clean blanket from the back room. I made her a cup of hot chocolate, hoping to calm her down a bit. Seraphina Wilson was fuming. This is exactly the kind of distraction we don't need, Elara. You're responsible for any fallout from this. The girl managed to calm down enough to tell me her name was Lyra. She had wandered off from a nearby park and gotten lost. Just as she started to relax, the police arrived. They thanked me for looking after Lyra and told me her parents had been frantically looking for her. Turns out she wasn't far from home after all. After the police and Lyra left, Seraphina Wilson pulled me aside, her face stern and cold. Because of your little stunt, I'm fining you. You took time away from your work to deal with this situation. You'll wash dishes for the next 2 days to make up for it. Orion just nodded along with whatever his mom said, not once standing up for me. It stung more than I expected. That night, as I scrubbed pot after pot, my mind raced. I felt more like a servant than a part of the family. Orion's support had always been my rock, but now he was just another weight dragging me down. Each harsh word from Seraphina Wilson, each nod of agreement from Orion, was a reminder of how trapped I felt. It was another ordinary morning at the store when a richly dressed man walked in, looking around like he was searching for something special. I greeted him and asked if I could help him find anything. He nodded and explained he was looking for a high-end tea set. I showed him our finest collection, and he seemed impressed, selecting one of our most expensive sets. While I wrapped up his purchase, he browsed our pastry section and picked out an assortment of treats. The whole time, he had this kind demeanor, making small talk and asking about the store's history. After ringing up his purchases, he thanked me and then paused, his expression turning a bit more serious. By the way, I'm not sure if you remember, but my daughter was the little girl you helped out last week, the one who got lost in the storm. I was taken aback, not expecting this twist. Of course, I remember. She was such a brave little girl. I'm glad I could help her. He smiled warmly and handed me his business card. Well, I'm really grateful for what you did. If you ever need anything, advice or help with anything at all, just give me a call, he said. I looked at the card and noticed he was a lawyer, Daxton. That caught my attention, considering the mess with the store and the merger. Actually, there might be something. Could we maybe talk about a legal matter? It's about the business my father used to own with my mother-in-law. Of course, he replied with an encouraging nod. Why don't you come by my office next week? We can go over everything in detail. I took him up on his offer, feeling a mix of relief and anxiety. At his office, I handed him the pile of documents my dad had signed years ago, the ones that merged our family store with my mother-in-law's bakery. He went through them carefully, his brow furrowing more with each page. After a long silence, Daxton looked up. There are several significant issues here. The contract has multiple violations that are quite concerning. I think we have a strong case if you want to challenge this, he offered. He agreed to help me pro bono to make things right. I was overwhelmed but grateful. Thank you. I'd like that. It's just hard, you know. It's my husband's family too. He understood my hesitation. It's not just about business, it's about your life. You deserve to have control over that. And you're not alone in this fight. I left his office feeling a mix of hope and dread. Could I really go against my husband and his mother? But then, what was the alternative? Living under Seraphina Wilson's thumb, watching the store my parents built from scratch being mismanaged. I walked into our house that evening, my mind still spinning from my meeting with the lawyer. I wasn't prepared for the scene that greeted me. The place was bustling, filled with guests laughing and talking, glasses clinking. I paused, taking it all in when my mother-in-law, slightly tipsy, spotted me. There you are, wandering the streets when you should be here serving your guests?" She bellowed across the room. "It's your anniversary, Elara. Have you no sense of duty?" I froze, my anniversary completely slipping my mind amidst the chaos of recent events. "I'm sorry, I forgot," I stammered, feeling every eye in the room turn toward me. My apology did nothing to soothe her. In a fit of anger, she grabbed a nearby pizza box and hurled it at me. The box grazed my shoulder before tumbling to the ground. "Useless, absolutely useless," she shouted, her face red with fury. Before I could recover, Orion, also showing signs of having had too much to drink, stumbled over to me. "And look at you, not even ready to eat. Wash up, for heaven's sake," he slurred, spilling wine from his glass onto my hands and clothes in a mocking gesture. The wine stained my shirt, cold and unwelcome against my skin. Something inside me snapped. The humiliation, the disrespect, the sheer injustice of how they were treating me, it all boiled over. I wiped my hands on my stained shirt and faced the room. My voice steady and loud, I declared, "I've been to a lawyer. I'm getting a divorce, Orion." The room fell completely silent. Orion and his mother looked at me as if they had seen a ghost. "Who do you think you are?" my mother-in-law hissed, stepping closer. "You think you can just—" I'm not finished. I cut her off, my voice ringing clear. "I'm challenging the merger of the store. There's been fraud, and I've already sent the documents to the authorities and to court." Orion staggered slightly, his earlier bravado fading. "Elara, you can't mean this. I'm also seeking financial compensation for everything I've endured here," I continued, ignoring his disbelief. The shock was palpable. Murmurs started to rise among the guests as my declaration sank in. I didn't wait for more questions or for the situation to escalate further. I turned on my heel and headed upstairs to pack my things. My mother-in-law followed, her tone shifting to desperation. "Elara, please let's talk about this. You're overreacting." I stopped, turned, and faced her one last time. Without a word, I handed her the lawyer's business card. "From now on, any communication goes through my lawyer," I said firmly. With that, I went to our room, my hands shaking but my resolve firm. I packed quickly, only essentials, only what I needed to start anew. I finally moved out of my mother-in-law's house and into a small apartment across town. It felt like breathing fresh air for the first time in years. I was on my own now, but I wasn't alone. My dad was with me, and together we were fighting to take back what was rightfully ours. My lawyer, Daxton, worked tirelessly on our case. He was a bulldog in the courtroom, fighting against the fraudulent merger my mother-in-law had orchestrated years ago. It wasn't long before we received the news we had been hoping for. The court ruled in our favor. They found Serafina Wilson guilty of fraud and overturned the merger. Additionally, they imposed a hefty fine on her and awarded me financial compensation. The compensation was just enough to buy out her share in the business. Standing in front of the shop, now fully ours again, felt so real. Without the shadow of Serafina Wilson looming over us, I handed Dad the new keys to the store. "Dad, we did it. It's ours again," I said. We spent the next few weeks renovating the store, making it ours again. Every new coat of paint, every display rearranged felt like reclaiming a piece of my soul that I had lost. Serafina Wilson and Orion were forced to find other jobs. The court costs and the fine took everything they had saved. I heard rumors about their struggles, but I kept my distance. Orion tried to reach out once or twice, but I didn't respond. That part of my life was closed. I was focused on the future now. With the store back under our control, I resumed my college studies. I enrolled in night classes, determined to finish my degree. Sitting in a classroom again, I felt hope, a stark contrast to the despair I had felt under Serafina Wilson's roof. One evening, after closing the shop, my dad and I sat at one of the tables, sharing a pot of coffee. "You know, Elara, starting over like this is more than I could have asked for," Dad said, looking around the shop fondly. I feel the same, Dad. It's like I finally woke up from a long bad dream. We have a second chance here, and I'm not going to waste it, I replied, feeling a strength in my words that I hadn't felt in years. We talked about plans for the future, new products we could introduce, holiday sales to prepare for, and community events we could sponsor. It was exciting, invigorating, and I loved every minute of it.
The words hit me like a sledgehammer to the gut. I froze in the hallway, hands trembling, as the conversation in the living room pierced my ears. "We need a new wife for Mitchell who can give us a grandson to carry on the family name," Franklin's gruff voice resonated. "That Adrienne is a failure. 15 years and she couldn't produce a male heir." My heart pounded, breath growing shallow. This couldn't be happening. "I agree," Louise chimed in, her tone laced with disdain. "It's time we found Mitchell a younger, more fertile replacement." Mitchell remained silent, his lack of objection a deafening betrayal. I clutched the wall for support, fighting the urge to burst through the door. How could the man I loved, the man whose family I had sacrificed everything for, be so complicit in this vile scheme? "Perhaps a woman from a respectable family this time," Franklin continued, driving the knife deeper. "Not some inexperienced nobody like Adrienne." Tears stung my eyes as their venomous insults lacerated my soul. All the belittling, the years of walking on eggshells in my own home, it had led to this. My disposal like a worn piece of furniture. The room fell silent. I held my breath, praying they wouldn't discover me eavesdropping. Footsteps approached, and I scrambled back towards the stairs, my heart in my throat. As I reached the top step, Ella appeared at the end of the hallway. "Mom, is everything okay?" I startled, her voice shattering my frantic haze. My beautiful, innocent daughter, would she become another casualty of this family's ruthless ambition? "Everything's fine, sweetie," I lied, forcing a smile as I pulled her into an embrace. "Just got a little dizzy, that's all." As I stroked her hair, my mind whirled. This couldn't go on any longer. Enough was enough. Those vicious snakes downstairs had awoken a protective fury within me, one that would stop at nothing to shelter my daughter from their toxicity. We had sacrificed too much already. My once blossoming career, laid to waste years ago when Mitchell insisted I be a stay-at-home wife to appease his controlling parents. All the demeaning comments, the constant dismissal of my role in this household, I had endured it for Ella's sake, hoping to preserve some semblance of family. But now they sought to tear us apart, to discard me and destroy the life I had desperately clung to. Not anymore. Those delusional fools had ignited an unquenchable fire within me. I would burn their twisted legacy to the ground. Sleep evaded me that night, as the venomous words replayed in my mind like a broken record. I tossed and turned, haunted by the prospect of being torn from my own family by those deceitful vipers downstairs. Mitchell remained oblivious, snoring beside me as if his parents hadn't just signed my death warrant. How could he be so blind, so resigned to their manipulative ways? The memories came flooding back, the demoralizing comments about my inability to birth a son, the snide remarks diminishing my role as a wife and mother. All along, it had been building towards this sick ultimatum. As dawn broke, I rose quietly, my restless mind swirling with anger and determination. Peering into Ella's room, I watched her sleep peacefully, her face a vision of tranquil innocence. She deserved so much better than this twisted farce of a family. Descending the stairs, I braced myself for the onslaught that would come. Franklin and Louise were already seated at the breakfast table, their expressions stern as gunshots. Well, if it isn't our useless daughter-in-law," Franklin sneered as I entered. "Did you finally come to your senses about providing us with a real heir?" My fists clenched, nails digging into my palms. "How dare you treat me with such disrespect in my own home?" Louise scoffed. "This is our home, you ungrateful fool, and you'll soon learn your place when Mitchell finds himself a new wife." The audacity of her words ignited my fury. "Over my dead body, I've sacrificed everything for this family, subjecting myself to your demeaning insults and archaic expectations." "Expectations you failed to meet," Franklin countered, his eyes narrowing to callous slits. 15 years without a grandson. You're the failure here, not us." I recoiled as if struck, their cruelty seeming to manifest as physical blows against my psyche. Mitchell entered, his brow furrowed. What's with all the yelling? Your precious wife has finally found her voice, Louise spat. Pity she didn't put that fire into producing an heir. Mitchell's gaze fell, his jaw tensing but no words escaping his lips. My heart sank. He wouldn't defend me, not against his poisonous parents. In that moment, any remnant of love I felt withered on the vine. This marriage, this family, it was all a lie perpetuated by heartless tyrants obsessed with legacy over humanity. But I wouldn't go down without a fight. If they thought they could bully me into quiet submission, they were gravely mistaken. Stealing my nerves, I met Franklin's menacing glare with unwavering defiance. You want a new woman for your spawn? You'll have to kill me first, because I'll burn this whole damn facade to the ground before letting you inflict your soulless dominance over me or my daughter. Their stunned silence spoke volumes. They had awoken a vengeful spirit they couldn't tame. Let the games begin. In the aftermath of my defiant outburst, a tense silence blanketed the house. Franklin and Louise avoided me like the plague, scowling whenever our paths crossed. Mitchell remained his typical apathetic self, seemingly oblivious to the war brewing under his own roof. My sole solace came from Ella, whose bright spirit served as a beacon during those turbulent days. But even she couldn't the darkness creeping into her eyes, the byproduct of this family's endless toxicity. "Mom, why do Grandpa and Grandma always treat you like that?" she asked one afternoon as we prepared dinner. I froze, uncertain how to respond without shattering her innocence. "They're just set in their ways, honey. Old-fashioned thinking." Her brow furrowed. "But the way they talk to you, it's not right." Sliding the casserole into the oven, I pulled her into a tight embrace, my heart aching at her precocious awareness. She deserved so much better than this poisonous environment. A knock at the door interrupted our moment. I answered to find Leo, one of the graphic designers from my former workplace, standing on the doorstep. "Leo, what are you doing here?" "I tried calling, but you didn't answer," he said, wringing his hands nervously. "I have some things I need to tell you, in private." Something in his tone hinted at its importance. "Of course, come in." As we settled in the living room, Leo's usual cheerful demeanor was replaced by a somber frown. "Adrian, I don't know how to say this." My heart raced, fearing the worst. "What is it?" He exhaled deeply. "It's about Mitchell's family business. There are rumors circulating about illegal practices, tax evasion, shady dealings, you name it. I wanted to give you a heads up." The air left my lungs in a forceful gust. Of course, why was I even surprised at this point? Franklin's obsession with legacy must have clouded any semblance of ethics or morality. "Are you sure about this?" I pressed. An idea sparked in my mind, a possible path to freedom from this wretched family's clutches. Leo nodded solemnly. "I've heard it from multiple sources. Just be careful, Adrian. These aren't the type of people you want to cross." As if on cue, Franklin's booming voice echoed through the hall. "Who are you talking to, you insolent?" He stopped short at the sight of Leo, his expression contorting into a mask of fury and trepidation. In that fleeting moment, I glimpsed the panic in the old bastard's eyes. He knew, and he knew that I knew. No longer would we cower under the weight of their contemptible actions. Armed with this newfound knowledge, the shackles began to loosen. "Everything okay, Adrian?" Leo's concerned voice shattered the tension. I met Franklin's widening glare with a subtle smirk. "Everything's just fine. In fact, it's better than it's been in a long time." The game was afoot, the first counterattack in my quest to dismantle their toxic empire. Justice would be served, by any means necessary. Franklin and Louise descended upon me like a pack of rabid wolves the following day. Their faces were twisted into snarling masks of rage, eyes burning with unbridled fury. "Who was that man in our home yesterday?" Franklin spat, slamming his fist on the kitchen counter. "Bringing strange men around without our permission?" Louise crowded me against the refrigerator, her thin lips curled into a sneer. "Trying to find a replacement for our pathetic son already? You conniving little—" "That's enough!" I silenced her tirade, squaring my shoulders in defiance. "That strange man is a former colleague. Unlike you two, he actually treats me with basic human decency." Franklin's eyes narrowed to predatory slits. "Watch your tone, girl. This is still our house." "For now," I muttered under my breath, just loud enough for his ears to prick up. Before he could respond, Mitchell's oblivious voice rang out from the living room. Mom, Dad, are we still going to Aunt Kathy's party tonight? As if a switch had flipped, Franklin and Louise's faces melted into grandfatherly masks of benevolence. Of course, son, Franklin called out jovially. We'll be right there. With one final scathing glare in my direction, they disappeared down the hallway, their sickening charade already in full swing. I doubled over, hands bracing against the counter as I struggled to catch my breath. This incessant gaslighting and emotional whiplash left me constantly on edge, my defenses forever raised. The party that evening was a waking nightmare. Kathy's lavish home was filled with Franklin and Louise's elitist cohorts, their fake smiles and vapid conversations sapping my will to exist. Mitchell reveled in the attention, basking in his family's twisted vision of success. As the evening descended into drunken revelry, Franklin seized the moment to lay into me once more. "Everyone, may I have your attention?" he bellowed, silencing the gathered guests. "Here it comes, the public debasement he seemed to relish dishing out. I'd like to make a toast," he continued, swirling his glass of scotch, "to my wonderful family, the backbone that has allowed our business to thrive all these years." Obediently, Mitchell and Kathy's family raised their glasses in celebration. My stomach turned at the sycophantic display. "And a special toast." Franklin leveled his reptilian glare at me, a sinister grin creeping across his face. "To my dear daughter-in-law, Adrienne, who has graced us with her boundless love and support for over 15 blessed years." The jeers and chuckles erupted immediately, raucous laughter echoing through the opulent hall. I fought back hot tears, my cheeks burning crimson with humiliation as all eyes bored into me. "What's the matter, dear?" Louise sneered, her voice dripping with malice. "No son to help carry on the family legacy?" That was it, the final indignity I could withstand. A familiar fire erupted in my soul, scorching away any remaining chains that once bound me to this abusive fiasco. I locked eyes with Franklin, my gaze hardening into steel-forged resolution. "You'll get your heir, Franklin. One way or another." His smug smirk faltered ever so slightly at my ominous words. The game was evolving now, the gloves coming off in this nightmarish battle of wills. There would be no more hollow compromises or feeble acquiescence. The avenging flame had been lit. In the wake of that disastrous party, a calm determination settled over me. No more would I cower under Franklin and Louise's twisted reign of terror. The path forward was clear. I would free myself and Ella from their poisonous clutches, no matter the cost. The first step required fortifying my defenses. I reached out to Leo, confiding in him the full extent of the abuse and degradation I had endured over the years. To his credit, he didn't flinch or judge, he simply listened with a compassionate ear. "You can't keep living like this, Adrienne," he said, after I had unloaded the full weight of my tortured story. "This kind of toxicity, it's soul-crushing." I nodded warily. "I know, but it's not just about me anymore. I need to get Ella away from their influence before it's too late." Leo leaned forward, his expression one of grim determination. "Then you have to get out. Both of you, clean break and start over somewhere new." The thought simultaneously exhilarated and terrified me. Could I really just uproot my entire life and flee from Mitchell's family? From the man I had once loved? But one glance at the photo of Ella on my dresser steeled my resolve. She was worth fighting for, worth sacrificing everything to liberate us both. "You're right," I said, meeting Leo's gaze with newfound conviction. "I've let them control me for far too long. It's time I took my life back." A subtle smile played across Leo's lips. "I might know someone who can help with that, if you're serious." My heart raced, though not with fear, with the thrilling embrace of taking that first defiant step. "I'm dead serious." Over the next few weeks, the plan took shape. Leo connected me with a contact who could provide new identities and credentials for me and Ella. A fresh start, far away from Franklin's poisonous empire. I also began diligently documenting every instance of their abhorrent behavior, recording conversations with a hidden device to preserve evidence of their threats and mistreatment. The pieces were falling into place. Of course, severing ties required money. My own savings having long been drained, financing their lavish lifestyle. So I did what any reasonable person would. I began systematically pillaging their household accounts, siphoning off enough to secure a new home and transition into this new life. It was a heady rush, chipping away at the foundation of their control with every covert transfer. With each withdrawal, I could taste the sweet liberation inching ever closer. The final puzzle piece fell into place when Leo approached me one afternoon, a modest grin adorning his face. "You'll never guess what just happened," he began, unable to contain his excitement. "One of the ad agencies I applied to, they want me, a senior design role in Denver." My eyes widened at the implication. Denver, over 1,000 miles away, far enough to escape this waking nightmare permanently. "Leo, that's incredible," I gushed, pulling him into an appreciative embrace. As we separated, his expression turned serious once more. "You know, they'd be insane not to want to bring you aboard, too. With your portfolio and experience?" I felt my heart swell with hope. "Are you saying?" A sly grin answered my unfinished query. "Let's just say your escape plan just got a hell of a lot more real." Giddy excitement bubbled within me. This was it. The rebirth I had dreamed of for years, but never imagined possible. The shackles of Franklin's tyranny were rusting away with each passing day. I was ready to breathe free again. The weeks flew by in a frenzied blur as Leo and I put the final pieces of our meticulously crafted escape into place. With each passing day, my heart raced with the tantalizing promise of imminent freedom from Franklin's toxic stranglehold. And yet, a part of me couldn't shake the nagging sense of obligation, the need to administer one final, righteous act of defiance before fleeing into the great unknown. It was during one of my covert recording sessions that the answer revealed itself, Franklin's very words providing the cosmic green light I had been seeking. "Told Henderson we'd have those shipments mislabeled and across the border by Friday," he grumbled to Louise in the study one evening. "That money launderer better hold up his end of the bargain this time." Money laundering and smuggling, the illegal dealings Leo had forewarned me about, now confirmed in high-definition audio quality. My chest tightened with perverse validation. This was it, the damning evidence that could bring their empire crumbling down around their rotten cores. Although delivering this recording to the authorities risked exposing my own culpability, the temptation to rain righteous fury upon their deceitful heads proved too delicious to resist. The day before our scheduled departure, with our falsified documents and new lives prepped for Denver, I decided to enact my parting salvo. As Mitchell and his simpering parents gathered to watch another mind-numbing sitcom rerun, I slipped the recording onto an unmarked disc and mailed it with an anonymous tip. My heart hammered as I sealed the envelope, half expecting Franklin to somehow sniff out my act of rebellion and retaliate. But the night passed like any other, filled with their meaningless, droning, and self-congratulatory posturing. Ella and I made our move the following morning, both of us dragging lightly packed luggage towards the awaiting taxi. Franklin and Louise were conveniently detained at some charity brunch, while Mitchell had already departed for the office. I steeled myself as I turned towards the home that had been my gilded prison for over a decade and a half, fighting back the urge to spit venom in its direction. Instead, I allowed the faintest hint of a smile to grace my lips as one fleeting thought carried me forward. Enjoy the reckoning, you bastards. The voyage to Denver passed in a dreamlike trance of giddy liberation. Gone were the weighted stares and snide remarks, replaced by the purifying vistas of a new frontier blurring past the taxi's windows. It was here, in a picturesque downtown loft that Leo had arranged for us, that the first reports began trickling in. Speculative mumblings online of Mitchell's family business being raided by federal agents. Allegations of fraud and financial improprieties. Each refresh of my burner phone's browser revealed further details of the proverbial House of Cards collapse. Overseas accounts seized, assets frozen, the entire rotten family in for questioning amidst a sordid firestorm of scandal. I absorbed it all with a heady mix of savage satisfaction and deeply rooted melancholy. As much as I had longed for this karmic reckoning, a small part of my heart ached for the good man Mitchell once was before becoming completely ensconced in his family's depravity. But that man was long dead now, replaced by a shell of obedient compliance. I had done what was necessary to save myself, and more importantly, to preserve Ella's innocence from their corruptive grasp. As the first traces of a Rocky Mountain sunset bled through our loft's picture windows, I felt Ella's small hand slipping into my own. Her warm smile was the reassuring balm I needed in that moment. "It's going to be okay now, isn't it, Mom?" I pulled her close, planting a tender kiss on her forehead as I committed to the words that would steer us forward into this new beginning. "Yes, my sweet girl. From now on, everything is going to be okay." The images flooded the news cycle in the days that followed. A disgraceful parade of perp walks and mugshots featuring Franklin, Louise, and their once illustrious family of criminal associates. Seeing those smug, condescending faces twisted into masks of abject humiliation filled me with a nauseating sense of gratification. The mighty patriarchs had fallen, brought low by the very greed and egomania that had fueled their toxic empire. They were finished, their hollow legacy cratering into a scorched pit of legal ruin and insolvency. A chapter of our lives that had once seemed inescapable was now drawing to a brutal, definitive close. My burner phone rang incessantly those first few weeks, Mitchell's number flashing across the screen like a deranged stalker. I never answered, of course. What could he possibly say to excuse his willing complicity in their depravity? To make amends for the years of emotional and psychological torment he enabled? No, the Mitchell I had loved was gone, forever sullied by an obsession with status and his family's perverse value system. He had made his bed, soiling the once pristine sheets with greed and moral bankruptcy. Now he could lie in it. The media fanfare surrounding the case was insatiable. Every tawdry detail, every allegation of financial chicanery splashed across the front pages in grandiose headlines: "Empire of Deceit, Family Business Revealed as Criminal Front." A part of me couldn't help but revel in the shameless rubbernecking. These were the very same high society elites who had once revered Franklin and his brood, suckling from the teat of their ill-gotten riches and high-minded heirs. Now those same sycophantic leeches were lining up for a front-row seat to this grotesque public lynching. Through it all, Ella remained my unshakable pillar of strength and clarity. While the news broadcasts recounted each sordid revelation with rabid indignation, her gentle hand would find mine, calming eyes reminding me of what truly mattered. We were free from their venomous clutches, the scourge of their poisonous influence exorcised by the brilliant light of justice. In time, even my own name would occasionally slip into the news cycle, comment sections speculating about the disillusioned wife who had finally had enough, who brought the whole rickety facade tumbling down. Each mention sparked a defiant fire within me, emboldening my sense of righteousness in the face of those who still sought to cast aspersions. They didn't see me as a victim who escaped, who reclaimed her autonomy by whatever means were available. No, in their privileged eyes I was simply another pariah to condemn, a filthy rat who had abandoned the sinking ship of family values and reputation maintenance. But I didn't need their hollow approval or shallow acceptance any longer. Those days of deference were buried, replaced by an awakened sense of purpose instilled by the mere act of perseverance. When the smoke finally cleared, our fractured little family would emerge from the rubble, hardened but victorious. And emerge we did, first in a modest two-bedroom flat near Leo's design firm, then slowly blossoming into an idyllic new life as the court-appointed restitution checks began to roll in. With each deposit, I could sense Ella's spirit elevating, her once dimmed sparkle reigniting in the warm glow of our freedom. We were more than survivors. We were the rising phoenix, scorched wings spreading wide to embrace a vibrant new reality far removed from that warped paradigm. No longer bound by poisonous pedigree or archaic patriarchal values, our truth finally unfurled for the world to witness. The apple never fell far from the tree after all. Sometimes they simply chose to forge a brand new orchard of their own making. The years melted away in a surreal blur of newfound tranquility and hard-earned growth. As Mitchell's family circus careened further into legal purgatory, Ella and I steadily rebuilt our lives from those traumatic rubble heaps. Denver proved to be the dream reboot we had so desperately craved, a world away from the suffocating toxicity of our former existence. Leo's design agency was a welcoming haven, the creative team treating me like a long-lost comrade rather than an outcast pariah. It was there, developing cutting-edge ad campaigns in a nurturing environment, that I finally rediscovered the spark that had set my soul afire all those years ago. The passion, the drive, the addictive thrill of visual storytelling, it all came roaring back with amplified intensity. While I thrived professionally, Ella's own transformation left me in awestruck admiration. The once shy, withdrawn young girl had blossomed into a confident, brilliant young woman, top of her class and already fielding inquiries from elite universities across the country. Our cozy two-bedroom flat, a humble refuge in those shaky early days, steadily gave way to an airy downtown loft, teeming with contemporary furnishings and Ella's vibrant artwork adorning the exposed brick walls. A canvas of her own reinvention, a physical manifestation of how far we had come. Holidays and special occasions, once tainted by Franklin's looming specter of scorn, became cherished celebrations sans judgment or archaic expectations. Blissfully ordinary rituals like baking pies for Thanksgiving or stringing up twinkling lights for Christmas filled our beings with joy rather than dread. At last we were beholden only to our own values, our own visions of what constituted a life well lived. No more pandering to hollow ideals or self-righteous blowhards obsessed with appearances over human dignity. Of course, the legal maelstrom endured like a nagging pop-up ad you could never quite close. Depositions and court dates, investment account audits, and impassioned victim statements. It seemed there was no end to the punitive wrangling over Mitchell's family's illegally acquired holdings and business entities. Through it all, I steadfastly refused to let the toxicity seep back into our reclaimed serenity. Gone were the days of bending to their antiquated will, of allowing them to extort my happiness and autonomy. Ella was my singularly empowering force now, her dazzling smile and academic accolades the only lingering proof I required of our profound metamorphosis. Then came the day I'll never forget. Ella's high school graduation party in our open-air loft, surrounded by Leo and her beaming new social circle of creatives and young progressives. A joyous kaleidoscope of positive energy in sharp contrast to the grotesque farce of that Aunt Kathy gala years prior. I watched my daughter mingle and exude self-assured warmth with a surreal sense of catharsis and validation. This beaming aura of confidence and freedom, with not a trace of familial anguish to restrain her effervescent spirit, it was more than I could have ever dreamed for her. In that moment, as the celebratory chatter echoed through our vibrant living space, I finally exhaled the last lingering twinges of psychological shrapnel. The looking glass had rematerialized into a shining reflection of succor and empowered rebirth, our journey from subjugation to self-actualization solidifying into an unblemished truth. Those reconstructive years had molded us into modern warriors, philosophers of the human condition emerging from the fires of domestic purgatory, tempered by the flames, yet nor vindicated by the righteous path we had chosen to carve through the shadows of oppression. And as Ella embraced me with glistening eyes and a radiant smile, I knew our next chapter was only just beginning to unfurl its magnificent wings.